Political commentator Moeng is up at this hour. Thank you for staying up, and he's in Freiburg, Buil in Switzerland. Now, as we continue to monitor the results as they come through, Solly, what do you say about the state and mindset of the electorate?
Well, good morning, you and your spectators out there. Look, it's a good thing that, first of all, of course, it's sad that too many people stayed away. They didn't understand the need, the importance of them participating in these elections. But it's a good thing to see that the ANC has come down in a lot of these areas because it needed to. I think too much power in the hands of the same people for too long is not good for South Africa. It would never be good for South Africa. I think there's a need for the ANC to start working with other people, consulting, not going ahead and just making decisions on its own. It's the most optimistic thing I can say about this. Of course, one would have wanted to see that there's a lot more dissolution of power away from the ANC into the hands of hopefully new players that would do things differently around the country in our municipalities.
Now, the ANC's message over the last few months, certainly around electioneering or campaigning, has been around the acknowledgement of the mistakes they've made in the past. But it would appear that voters, at least a significant number of them, aren't interested.
Yeah, of course. Look, the ANC has been making excuses for many years now. It's been saying, we're sorry, we shouldn't have done this, we're sorry, we're correcting. Even with Zuma, when Zuma was around, it had opportunities to remove him from office when he was really messing up the country. And they didn't. They can't pretend not to have seen this. It's almost like an abusive partner, isn't it, who hits you all the time and apologizes at the right time so you don't leave. And he hits you again, he apologizes again. This is what the ANC has been doing to the South African people. I think that it's time really now that the voters took power into their own hands, away from the ANC, and decided, okay, we've given you enough, let's give it to somebody else. But they must do the same thing. So anybody who comes in who's new, who ends up not behaving like he's there or she's there to serve the people of South Africa, they must do the same thing to them. It's time, really, that the South African electorate woke up and realized the power in its hands, in its vote.
ANC currently shy of 47% from results just in, which are standing at about 58%. What do you think has contributed to this loss in voter turnout? Is it all been about service delivery?
I think it's a combination of a number of things. A lot of people stayed away at home because they didn't believe that there was any power in their vote. I know people who said, look, what difference is it going to make to go and vote? We've been doing the same thing over and over again. It ends up with the same outcomes anyway. Nothing ever changes. So people have also given up on the power of they had in their vote. And I mean, of course, you must all assume that all the results that we're seeing are what they are, that what they should be, which we should. But people have given up in the power of their vote. People have given up because things have kept going on and on, especially because of the apologies that we've seen from the ANC. It's a vicious cycle of apologies. We have to keep talking about the ANC because it remains the Makulu bus of South African politics, isn't it?
Solly, I'm going to shift focus a little bit and look at some comments that were made earlier on today. And one of those was that the turnout of voters in white communities, if you will, was significantly higher than in black communities. Now, this apathy, what do you attribute it to?
Yeah, that's very good. I think that we cannot deny the fact that I think most West Africans have, let's say, not everybody has been voting during apartheid, but they come from a tradition, a culture of understanding the power of the vote. And they knew that if you participate in elections, you can sway the power in one direction from another direction. And that's why and there's a lot of, if you look at social media participation discussions and on media, West Africans have been following the events in South Africa, development in South Africa. They've been following the rise and fall of the rand. They've been looking at what's going on with the state-owned institutions. They've been looking at the service delivery levels that have dropped, that have become worse in many parts of the country. So they've been looking at those things. On the other hand, black people, I think they still, look, the only other time when South Africa wasn't governed by the ANC, it was apartheid. It was a really, really, really bad place for them. So it's hard for them to imagine a South Africa that's not governed by the ANC. And it's true that there are also people who are scared that were the ANC to go away, maybe apartheid would return. It's a silly thing, of course, to you and me, but there are people who believe that. So they'd rather have the devil they know, the ANC, than not. I mean, I've seen people say, I'd rather stay. Whom am I going to vote for? Come on, did you see the number of parties on the ballot papers? Lots of them. But people still say the things, tell you that they have nobody to vote for. They still don't understand that voting is not out of love or out of getting somebody to become a king or queen or prince or president. You vote to give them a voice in the local municipality, in the council, or in the National Assembly for national government elections. So you vote for somebody because you want them in there to keep saying the things that need to be said, not because you think that person is going to be the executive mayor of your country. And people don't understand that. They think you must vote for somebody because we love them. If you don't love them, you don't vote for them. So there's still a lot of education, civic education, that has to be done in South Africa, especially within the broader black community, about how votes, how democracies function, especially our particular democracy.
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of education, civic education. A lot of this education can occur on social media. Now, hundreds of thousands of young people are on social media and are raising issues around service delivery and the challenges that they're facing in this country. But they were not represented at the polls.
Yeah.
How does that actually happen?
Look, I know people that I thought I respected who told me, I am not voting because I don't think it changes. And I know people who are smart people. I think they're smart people, okay, who said the same. They're not young people. They are in their late 40s, early 50s. We're saying that. So let alone young people who are young people. See, social media gives you sound bites. It gives you headlines, especially Twitter. You don't really get to read. I mean, we live in an era of very, very short attention spans. People don't read stuff. They don't read manifestos. They're too long. There's too much jargon in there. Old people and young people don't have time. South Africans need to give themselves time to understand who is this person, who is this party, what are they really promising, and how do I hold them to account once if I vote for them after that? Because a lot of people still don't know who the councillor is in the area. Or they treat councillors like superstars, like heroes, as if the councillors are the ones to be praised and carried on shoulders. No, it should be the other way around. South Africans, that's what I'm saying, our politics, South African politics, should move into an era where the voter, not the politician, understands the power in their hands, and they understand that the power doesn't just stop at the time when you vote. It also extends throughout the period. You need to keep that person onto their toes. Are they doing what they promised to do? Do you know where they live? If there are potholes in your area, if electricity is not working, if services are not delivered in your area, whom do you go to? How do you make sure that person knows that they're not going to be elected again if they keep instead of treating them like they're superstars, which is what we do. We stand up when they come into the room. We praise them. We sing for them. Even the people who steal for us, they come into the room, beautiful songs. We stand up and dance with them. We shouldn't. We should tell them, no, we're not here to dance with you, sir. Today we're here to ask you to tell us what you're doing about this, this, and this. South Africans are not doing that. We need to move from the era of the power in the hands of politicians and political parties into an era where the power lies in the hands of the voters. But we can't go there when people are still lazy to read, when people still don't understand even our own political system, our electoral system, and that's a big problem. Without that knowledge, people will remain weak.
Now, how do we get to that position? And the reason I ask is because many of the promises, or at least a significant number of promises that several politicians were making, is not the preserve of the local government. These are issues of the national government. But they would still go ahead and make those promises, certain assertions that they obviously cannot keep because they do not have the power as a local government official.
Yeah, I love that point. It's true. But they make those promises because, it goes back to the point I made, because we allow them to make those promises. We don't stand up and say, wait a minute, you can't tell me you're going to do something about immigration when we're discussing local government elections, local government issues. Immigration is a national government competency. People don't know that. So they sit there, they just marvel at this beautiful person speaking in front of them because they don't know. So the absence of knowledge in the presence, on the part of the electorate in South Africa is a big weakness. What needs to happen? We should move. The civic education must not be conducted by political parties because they always do it for their own self. They do it to teach you how to vote for them. We need an institution in South Africa, maybe not called the IEC, because I mean, look, we've seen what has been said about the IEC. It's been questioned a lot more now during these elections, and for all the good reasons than it used to in the past. We need a neutral body that's not controlled by any political power. Okay, not any political party. That will go around the country in between elections, not just 4 or 5 weeks before the elections, saying to South Africans from an early age, this is South Africa. You know where I live in Switzerland? It's amazing, and I don't want to go on about Switzerland here, but what I want to say to you, people know how things work. They know how the local commune works, who has the power, what kind of power, the limitations of the power, what they must expect from that person, and how it works, and what happens if they don't get what they should be getting from that person. In South Africa, people don't know that. But you don't need political parties to teach people, because political parties do it for their own self-interest. You need a totally neutral body, not the IC, because it's not as neutral as it used to be. Okay? We must talk about these things. You need a neutral body to teach South Africans from tomorrow, from now, until the next elections, how elections work, how the South African political system works, what it means to elect somebody into power, into office or not, and what happens if you vote for somebody because they gave you a packet of sweets or lollipop 2 days before the elections, when you know that they have not been there for you all the time. People should know that. We need to move away from this era of ignorance and laziness to read, to understand issues by the electorate, because it works against their own interests.
So this is probably the highest number of hung municipalities that we've ever had. Now, how do you see the ANC navigating this area of coalition governments? Well, not just the ANC, but the DA, the EFF, and any of the major parties in this scenario. In an interview just now that my colleague had, the DA representative said she is not prepared to work with the ANC. Neither is she prepared to speak to the EFF because they differ on so many fundamental grounds, she says.
Yeah, look, I can understand all these politicians saying those things, and I totally agree with people not wanting to work with so and so and so and so. I mean, we've watched them over the years. We know what the relationships are like, but we are in an era of coalition politics, and this is not the first. This is the second round of coalition politicians. So we would expect that, especially those who were there before in 2016, know that what it's like to be in coalition politics is not all about you. You have to make certain decisions that are really important. You have to compromise. You have to reach over the aisle and speak to somebody that you don't really want to work to, not because you like that person, but because the electorate said we also want that person in the room. So you can't make that decision, even if you think it's the best decision, even if you think it's a decision that you were elected to put in place. If you don't speak to the other person who was also chosen, elected by them. So they're going to have to learn with each other, to work with each other. And the African National Congress, even more so, because it's been carrying all the power, it still carries too much power. I mean, this drop for 1%, 2%, we all celebrate, yeah, it's weaker, it's now below 50%. It should be at 40% now, even at 39% now. So anyway, it's at where it's at now, right? It is going to have to learn that decisions. South Africa and South African municipalities do not belong to the ANC, all right? The ANC must learn that it has to share power with other people who were elected by the people of South Africa. They are the people who voted for the EFF or for the DA, for Action SA, for the IFP, for FF+, are not less South African than the people who voted for the African National Congress.
Now, the ANC is not known for being selfless, as are many of the other politicians. Do you expect them to put aside their differences and fend or fight for the people? Because, the old saying goes that when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Can we expect Now, based on past history, coalition governments do not have the best track record. Can we expect a change?
I think there will be some changes, especially, look, those who have been there before should know that it's not easy. Once you go in there without the sufficient power to impose or to implement the decisions that you would have implemented without the existence of other people that you have to deal with, I think they've come to understand the EFF has been there before. Okay, it hasn't really run municipalities, hasn't it? But at least it's been in those coalition movements in Pretoria, governments rather, in Johannesburg and Tshwane, and they should learn. It's important that we don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. This is part 2 or level 2 of coalition politics in South Africa. And anyway, they don't have a choice. They're going to have to find a way to work with other parties. If they don't, the electorate must keep an eye on them. They must ask the right question. It's going to be frustrating. There's no doubt about it. And some decisions might take long to be implemented because of the wheeling and dealing behind the scenes between political parties. One party wanting this position in exchange of supporting that power, that vote over there, or another position in exchange of, there's going to be that sort of thing. But the parties must also be mindful of their reputation. They must be mindful that if they go into deals, no matter what the reasons are for going into those deals, if they're going to deals that are going to compromise their own reputational standing, it's going to hurt them again in the future. Look at what happened to Mashaba. Mashaba went into the... Actually, we must be very clear here. Mashaba didn't go into the coalition with the EFF. The DA allowed Mashaba, represented by Mashaba, went into coalition with the EFF. And look at what people are saying. Now the DA is standing back. Some people are even saying, no, he did this on his own. Well, no, it's not true. He didn't unilaterally go into those agreements with his party stood behind him, but they are afraid to own up to that. At least some members of it are afraid to own up to it. So he now must face that thing on. He must constantly be answering questions. But you went into coalition politics with the EFF. You know what these people represent. You know what they are for. You must. So anyone who goes into decisions with political parties that are really, really questionable, or decisions that might hurt their reputation, must know that they're going to have to account for it when the next elections come out.
Solly, coming back to the ANC, how does it stop this tide of voter loss? And general election on the horizon, are these results a threat to Cyril Ramaphosa remaining at the helm of the ruling party, do you think?
Well, I think that Cyril Ramaphosa's faction, of course it is a faction, he leads a portion of the African National Congress, has become strengthened in recent months, especially with the departure or the sidelining of Magashule and some of the people who were aligned around Zuma and Magashule. I think those people know which side of their bread is buttered. They know that to stay in power with all those perks and politics and positions and salaries, they have to toe the line, the Ramaphosa line. So I think that he is a little less threatened now than he was before. But at the ANC, being the ANC, they still have their National General Council coming up. You don't know what they're going to throw into his face. The issue of nationalizing the Reserve Bank might still be thrown into his face. The issue of land expropriation without compensation might still be thrown into his face. Other things that people have been going on about as resolutions taken by the party that the president must implement will be thrown into his face. But so far, I think he's managed to strengthen the ground within the ANC that he controls. I think he can look less over his shoulder as he walked through Lituli House as he did when Magashule and all those people around Magashule were there. But it's good. It's good that he's been, that politicians are never allowed free space to run. Of course, we don't want to also end up with a president for the Republic of South Africa who might be less inclined to listen, or who might even be more aggressive in defending, embracing the indefensible, because the ANC is known as a party that defends the indefensible all the time, that has always and always and always placed the interests of the African National Congress ahead of the interests of South Africa. Ramaphosa is probably if the ANC leaders wear dirty shirts Ramaphosa is probably the least dirty of them. And we'd rather stay with the least dirty shirt until the next general elections, so that hopefully South Africans, by the time we get to the next general elections, they would have woken up, understood the power of their vote and how the electoral system works in South Africa, and chosen somebody else. But if we were to end up between next year and 2024 with an African National Congress president who might not care about our institutions and the independence of the institutions and the fact that the country is more important than the party, we're going to be in serious, serious trouble. So I'd rather have a President Ramaphosa leading us to the next general elections than somebody else who might still have all sorts of ghosts and things to hide from the past, who might also have the NPA wanting to go after him or her. It's a really treacherous environment to be in.
Moeng, political commentator, thank you so much for staying up this late and speaking to us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Moeng speaking to us from Buil in Switzerland. Certainly appreciate him making the time.